Good after evening, good afternoon, good evening from Copenhagen in Europe, Denmark, and also good late afternoon from UK. And welcome to Smarter Webley Wednesday. Good to see you, Andrew. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good today, actually. I've come back from a week's holiday, which was nice. And
Holiday.
yeah. Well, I've worked, I've run the business before we listed for 15 years, and there's not really any such thing as a switch off holiday, when you run a business. So it's indifferent in that regard. But it was good. Yeah, I had a few meetings over there. We did a fundraise that we announced on Monday morning, a small fundraise with one institutional investor, one high net worth. We've obviously had the news that's come out today. So yeah, it was a nice break. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, and it's good to see you again. I had Jesse on last Wednesday, but why don't you tell us a bit about the announcement this morning, since it's fresh off the press and maybe not everyone's heard about it.
So we announced something that's very significant for us this morning. It's called Smarter Convert. So effectively, what it is it's an interest-free loan. So it's technically debt, but it's denominated in Bitcoin. So what that means is that we have the $21 million, which is converted into Bitcoin. We'll convert 100% of it into Bitcoin. So that will be Bitcoin on the balance sheet, just like the other Bitcoin that's on the balance sheet. And then if that does not convert into equity over the life of the instrument, which is 12 months, then the investor, Tobam, has got the right to ask for their bond to be repaid, which means we give them the Bitcoin back. So if Bitcoin goes up in value, we give them back more than $21 million. If Bitcoin goes down in value, we give them back less than $21 million because we give them back the Bitcoin. So for a company of our size, it's really smart because what it means is that we're not exposing ourselves for a short time period when we're smaller, to that fiat currency risk with the volatility of the underlying asset. I think that it's been really well structured because what it allowed us to do is it allowed us to raise money above the current market price. So when we priced it, which was last night, the share price was £1.95. So they can convert it into equity at approximately £2.05. It's 2.0475 to be exact. So it's slightly less dilution, 5% less dilution, if it converts into equity. But then for the second half of the 12 months, we've got the right to demand, to force that they convert it into equity if it's 50% higher. So there is literally no downside for the company. In fact, there's only upside, because if it doesn't convert into equity, we don't even give them 100% back of the Bitcoin. We give them 98% of it back. So it's really, really good. And Tobam are a great company. They've been established since 2006. And one little thing that we didn't put in the RNS, but I've seen a few comments today, is so in 20 years they've been established and they've never shorted a stock in their life. So if you were doing a traditional convertible, so I've got people that would offer me tens of millions of dollars to do a fiat-based convertible with a small coupon. A longer time period we could do, but that would be exposing ourselves to the coupon, and it would be exposing ourselves to the fiat risk. But then also the thing that a lot of people don't understand is the traditional convert people, they will short the hell out of your stock, because literally all they're trying to do is to hedge the risk that they're taking in the convert aspect of the product. Whereas this thing that we've devised, the Bitcoin denominated product that we've called Smarter Convert, it doesn't have that. It's a different profile. There is no incentive to short it. And we wouldn't do it with investors that wanted to do that sort of a thing. So yeah, I'm really pleased to be working with them. I've got the utmost respect for them, and they've been great to work together on this. And I'm very much looking forward to working with them in the future. The other thing that's quite cool about it is that up until today, since we IPO'd basically, we haven't had an institutional investor that we've been able to name. So we've got UTXO who supported us on the pre-IPO. Tyler joined the board, great guys, very, very supportive. So we've had them since the start, but since then we've not had a named institutional investor that we've been able to communicate with the market. So I think that's quite good as well, because a lot of the discussions that I've got at the moment are with some really, really big institutional investors that we're trying to bring in, probably more on the equity side than the smarter convert side. But obviously we've got that capital raising instrument that we can use now. But what we're trying to do over the coming weeks and months is to have more institutional investors on our share register, because that gives people confidence as well. We're lucky that we've had people support us to date on the institutional side, but no one's been big enough to be named, and that's what we're trying to change. Because a lot of people say to me, "Can you name the investors?" And I can't, because it's private. They don't need to be disclosed. But that's one of the things that we are able to do with the TOBAM deal that we announced this morning, to tell people the names, because we're all about transparency, and I was pleased to be able to do that.
No, it's excellent, and congratulations on that. And I mean, I met Yves from TOBAM, the founder and CEO, down in Prague, and they've been working with Capital B for quite some time, and I presume it's the same kind of structure of Bitcoin bonds that they're doing for you now. And I think I want to bring up a question from Christopher on the chat. I'll bring it up on the screen, just because he wrote this after you explained it, so it's a win-win. I don't know if it's possible to just let me read it up for those that are listening. What's the point of effectively borrowing Bitcoin to buy Bitcoin? The convert only makes sense if MNAV goes up, but if that happens, you could just issue equity at that point. But essentially, it's win-win for you. But please, if you want to answer this one, maybe.
Yeah, sure. So you've got a lot of investors out there in the world that believe in Bitcoin like us. And what's the only thing that's better than Bitcoin is compound Bitcoin, in my opinion. So you've got these investors and some people with significant amounts of Bitcoin that want a return that's better than Bitcoin. So the way that they can achieve that, or one of the ways they can achieve that, is to invest in a well-managed Bitcoin treasury company. So that's why you structure it like this. So effectively, somebody is investing in you, and the benchmark of that investment, all they care about is that their new investment, i.e. the potential equity, is going to perform better than Bitcoin. So that's why the investor does it. Why does the company do it? Well, I can borrow money. I can borrow money from you, and you might lend me dollars. Or I could borrow money from you, and you might lend me Bitcoin. So if you're a smaller company and you're being quite cautious with how you're managing it, obviously everyone knows that we've been fairly fast-paced on growing, and we're trying our very, very best on that. But if you take on that fiat debt when you're smaller like us, we've only got approximately £200 million worth of Bitcoin and cash in our treasury, so we're not into the billions yet. Then as the CEO, I've got to be conscious of repaying that debt if we have a bad year in terms of Bitcoin. So that's why it makes sense to take the debt that's denominated in Bitcoin, because everything after it in terms of the convert is done in fiat terms. So the share price that these people can convert at is fixed. It's 195 plus 5%, which is approximately 2.05. So for the next year, they can effectively convert into equity at that price. But if I had taken that $21 million last night, which we announced this morning, if I had taken that in cash and done it in equity rather than smarter convert, then I would have done it at 195. So it's 5% more dilution for our shareholders. So there isn't really any downside,
No.
The only thing I think you would want to be a little bit careful of, which we put in the announcement, is from a structural point of view. I don't think that you'd want, you know, like 100% of your treasury exposed to that, because what that would mean if you fast forward 12 months is if Bitcoin had a bad year, for example, it wouldn't convert, you'd give the Bitcoin back, the treasury's got nothing in it. So I have said that approximately 30% of the treasury as a sort of a maximum level should be exposed to that sort of an instrument, you know, in case everything doesn't progress. You know, I believe Bitcoin's going significantly higher in the not too distant future. And I believe our share price is going to go on to new highs, you know, this year. But that's just my opinion. You know, I have to structure everything for, you know, more doomy and gloomy scenarios, which is why we've done it like that. So, so yeah, I think it's a pretty good product. I can understand the question, but it's just thinking it through. And that's why in the RNS, we also put a worst case and a best case scenario in there, just to try and make it easy for people to understand. Because whereas I've been thinking about this, trying to get it as perfect as I can for weeks, obviously everyone is only seeing this today.
Can you hear me, Andrew?
Yeah.
I think I had a little technical thing here on my computer. Sorry, but yeah, thank you very much for that answer. So Tobam have never shorted these shares that they do, that they work with, and since this is a placement by them, there is not other people in the market that can start shorting because of this, right? So that it's like completely off the table, basically, in practice, any shorting.
Yeah. So with any market, you'll always get smaller investors, you know, going long, going short, and things like that. It's quite hard to short a stock on Aquis because of the borrow. You know, so you will always get a little bit of it, but you're not going to get it coming out of the actual investors. And to be fair, you know, in my opinion, you'd be absolutely nuts to short a Bitcoin treasury stock, because you know, if Bitcoin rips, or simply that company executes their strategy and raises money at good terms, you're just making life unnecessarily hard for yourself. You'd be much better off shorting something in a different sector. It's probably the worst sector in the world to short, unless you don't believe in Bitcoin. Then maybe there is an argument for it, but then you're probably better off shorting Bitcoin, I would suggest. You know, so Tobam are a long only company, you know, and in almost 20 years, they've never shorted a single stock. And also forgetting that point, there is no incentive for them to actually short a stock that they've actually done a facility like this with. So, you know, in terms of them, nothing. But, you know, you might get other people messing around, you know, going short against the stock. You know, that's kind of part of a healthy market. I haven't actually got a problem with anyone that shorts our stock. You know, I wish them luck. But you know, at the end of the day, they will just contribute to the, you know, the sharp rises when those sharp rises happens. But if they want to do that, then we're just an instrument at the end of the day. If people want to short it, no problem.
Yeah, would love to see a short squeeze. That would be excellent. So you've continued to execute and stack Bitcoin even through this sideways, downwards market, both in Bitcoin and in treasury companies. So that's awesome to see as an investor. And the other thing I want to touch upon here is that you've reached top 1, top 2 in Europe, where you came just above Capital B, the previous blockchain group in France, and now they have 25 Bitcoin more than you, but you now have cash that you can buy more Bitcoin with. So, I mean, happy for both of you. You're buying a lot of Bitcoin. Very happy for you that you're living up to the term faster horse currently. So how does that feel? You're knocking in the top 1, top 2 in Europe.
So I've got tremendous respect for Alex from Capital B. I've got a reasonable size shareholding in the company, and I believe in what they're doing. I felt a bit bad actually, because I can't remember when it was, just over a week ago, I actually went for lunch with him. And I thought I'd get it out of the way early in the conversation. I said, well, you know, on paper, based on publicly available information, it looks like we've probably got enough cash to, just go past you. So should that happen, I just want you to realize that, I've got the utmost respect for you and your company, and I believe in what you're doing. And he said pretty much the same thing as that back. And it's great. If we do better, they do better, because they're built on the same asset as us. If they do better, if they raise more capital in however they're going to do it, then that's a great thing. It's more capital for Bitcoin. So I've consistently said since the start, I want to see other companies doing it well, and that I believe in, and they're one of the top couple of companies in the world that I believe in. Obviously, I'm competitive as well a little bit. I believe that probably by the end of this week, using publicly available information, we'll maybe be past them. I don't know. They might have a mega fundraise that brings in loads more money than we'll get in the short term. But with everything that I can see at the moment, I think we'll be back in that slot, and I think we might even be a little bit higher, because this sort of 24, 25, whatever it is, position that we're all in at the moment. Once you can bust out of that a little bit, so to like, I don't know, 2,250, 2,300 Bitcoin, those sorts of levels, then the jumps you need to get bigger. Then you need to move hundreds and hundreds at a time, rather than 50 Bitcoin or whatever making the difference. So yeah, I really like them, and I've got a lot of respect for what they're doing. But I'm quite looking forward to sort of trying to get to the next level for ourselves, and we'll see how that one goes.
Absolutely looking forward to see you both reach 10,000 Bitcoin, and then hopefully also 100,000 Bitcoin, and then we see how far you get before hyper Bitcoinization, and then we can't play that game anymore. But then once you have a lot of Bitcoin on your balance sheet, you're essentially potentially running a bank and can create SATS income with that collateral.
That's a really interesting thing, though, isn't it? It's at the moment it's a bit of like a land grab, I suppose. And as you say, that won't last forever. Maybe 3 years, 5 years. I don't know how long it will last. But then you'll see all of these companies changing into whatever they're going to change into, and that'll be a really interesting phase for all of these companies. The banks of the future, the best capitalized companies in the world, to see what they all do with that and how they then move things forward. We've got lots of ideas that we talk about all the time of what that could look like. We talk about it with some of the other companies as well, and that's going to be a really interesting time. But we're here where we are at the moment, which is all about speed of execution, building that stack, building a company that's structured in the right way, and trying to do it in a respectful way to everyone that chooses to support the company with their capital.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting to see what that end game is going to look like, and when it's going to happen. And I spoke to Jesse last week, where while we were talking, came to the conclusion that because there will always be some kind of premium to the like the MNAV should always be significantly above one. Sure, in a bear market it could go below, which could be accretive, because then you can sell Bitcoin and buy stock, and it'll help the existing shareholders, which is your job. But because in an end game there will be a premium to the Bitcoin, because you can generate an income, it removed my fear of Bitcoin accumulating companies stalling the engine, because you'll always be away from one. You'll not be at one as long as you're away from one, which you will always be. You can run the engine and stack more sats. And surely maybe right now, when the stock prices are down on these companies across the board, and Bitcoin is flat or down a little bit, maybe the stacking is a little bit slower, but that means you're still growing in size, even though Bitcoin is not moving, which means you'll be bigger by the end game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, don't forget as well that when we all think about the cost of Bitcoin, you can argue that the cost of Bitcoin is static. It's everything else that's changing. So, when Bitcoin's 250, 500, $1 million, whatever dollars, you know, Bitcoin's kind of the same. It's just the value of the dollar's fallen. So, you know, relative, because that's what a currency is at the moment. If you look at pound, dollar, you know, dollar, euro, whatever, they're pairs, you know. So it's just a pair that is, you know, there's a relationship between the two. So, you know, when we talk about the potential of Bitcoin companies slowing down, you know, we just have to go back to our own lives and look at when we go to the supermarket and we buy stuff that costs an awful lot more than it did last year because of inflation. You know, that's another dimension that people don't often talk about when they talk about the future prices and how we're going to acquire things. You know, look at the price of your house, for example, you know, relative to what it was 10 years ago or anything like that. You know, it's on one hand, you're thinking that you're going to buy less Bitcoin, but are you not going to maybe just buy the same at the higher price because the capital is less valuable, i.e. you get more capital which has got the same notional value. So it's certainly going to be very, very interesting, and you know, we've got lots of thoughts and we think about it a lot, obviously. But yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure.
Absolutely. So also initially here in the interview, you were talking about the UK institutional investors may be starting to be more interested. You're becoming a bigger size, a more of interest to the really big players in UK. So that's the first question. Is this predominantly UK you're thinking about in terms of institutional investors waking up to SWC?
No, it's both actually. So UK and European. So I've got a completely full diary at the moment. So I think I've got 4 meetings tomorrow as an example, and that's a pretty normal day. So they're definitely getting more interested because there's a lot of education that goes on behind the scenes, and you know, we're only just getting to that size, you know, 500 million to $1 billion market cap. That's only just getting big enough for these institutions to want to be interested in a company. You know, unlike what a lot of people think, that you get to like 50 million, 100 million market cap, you know, it's way too small for a credible institution to want to invest. So that's one side of things. And then I've also got a lot of interest from the States at the moment, which is really interesting. So we're speaking to some really, really credible people that raise an awful lot of money for you know, some companies who will remain nameless, because if I say it's, you know, my hero's company, that'd probably give the game away. Yeah, so yeah, we're trying our best on that front as well. You know, I think, you know, we've been good with international capital so far. You know, in terms of the capital raising, not just the secondary markets, because the secondary markets, you know, not just the UK, Frankfurt, US, they're all very, very important to us. But in terms of that institutional stuff, we've done okay so far. But we are conscious that in addition to these great conversations that we're having with UK and European institutions, we want to be having those conversations, and those conversations with the US equivalents need to come through. In the States, they call them bankers as opposed to brokers. So we're working on that. And then we've got another initiative that we're working on in the States at the moment, which I'm not able to talk about just yet. And that's really exciting as well. And that's something that by the end of the year, I'll be able to talk about. So that's quite cool as well.
Wow, by the end of the year, that's a long time horizon in this space. So it must be interesting.
Yeah, what people sort of sometimes need to keep in mind is we all want to see things change, and we always try and show people stuff maybe not every day, but certainly every week. We try our very, very best to show people improvement, you know, that the business is growing, and it has grown, and you know, we're way stronger than we were even a month ago as a company, which is ironic when you think that the market cap is probably lower than it was a month ago, and we're a way stronger company than we were a month ago. So there's lots of things that are going on, and some of those things you might see you know, in a day, a week, whatever, and then some of those other things you might not see for a month, 3 months or whatever, because some things take longer. So you know, we're doing a lot of different things behind the scenes, and some of them take as long as they take. You know, we always push it as hard and as fast as we can, but there's, you know, certain things that mean that some things just take time, and that's my job, you know, behind the scenes. You know, people don't see that you're constantly working on these things, you know, on all these different you know, things that are going to be done at different times. You know, I'll give you a good example, the smarter convert that we announced today. Like, we probably started seriously trying to work out how we could do that, say 3-4 weeks ago, something like that, I guess, which is really quick for something like this. So, you know, things take a bit of time. You know, we try to get them done as quickly as we can. Sometimes there's certain points at which it's right to do certain things. But yeah, we try and get things done, obviously.
Yeah, and you certainly do, Andrew. And talking about getting things done, you now also have Jesse on the team, who was here on the channel a week ago. So what does that look like now that you have him on board? You have an extra resource to get things done. What does it allow you to do more of? How does he help out? Like, he's got some specific competences, of course, and analytical tools.
Yeah, well, it's amazing working with Jesse. You know, as I said, when we got him to join the company, I spent quite a long time getting to know him, because, you know, I was very conscious that it was such an important role to have someone working alongside me doing lots of different things. It's not just that I've been happy with how it's worked out, I've been beyond happy with how he's settled in so far. He's currently, you know, like, to be honest, he's been working full time for the last few weeks anyway, but formally migrating into full time, because, you know, obviously we've got to pay him and things like that for that, you know, even though he hasn't asked for it. And that's going to be tremendously helpful for the company. But, you know, we're really trying to build out the team at the moment. So I can't go into specifics other than what people can see from a couple of adverts, but they won't see some of the adverts because, you know, they're not the sorts of things you advertise. But we're really trying to build out that team, because I want to have the very best people in the world. You know, like, we'll never be a massive team. We might end up being, like, let's say 15 people, you know, in 6 months' time or something. But we're really trying to build that out. But Jesse is absolutely fantastic. You know, he's somebody that, say, for example, I couldn't be in the business for whatever reason, which is certainly not the plan. I want to do this for 5, 10, 15 years. But he's somebody that I would be absolutely fine with, you know, leaving him to do it. You know, I want people who are better than me. And Jesse is certainly one of those people.
That's excellent. I think the best managers try to hire people better than themselves, but I think still everyone agrees, Andrew, that you are, if not the GOAT, the faster horse. I can say personally, I'm incredibly impressed by your speed of answering emails, and, like, I'm just little me here on the side, hooking you up in the calendar invites and stuff. But you're a beast. You execute. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm on it most of the time. I'm on it.
Yeah. So I saw one of your tweets today, so I'm just going to put that on the screen. You're also joining the New York NYC on conference September 17th that is put together by Tim Consman. And if anybody want to go, that code Anders10 gets you 10% on, but a lot, not on, off. But you're also going. Very happy to see that, Andy, because then Andrew. Because then we get to hang out, and I get to say hi to you in person as well, finally.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and Jesse will be there as well. I booked the travel the other day. You know, that's another thing I have to do behind the scenes, sort out all the travel, which takes a bit longer than one might think. But I've actually booked to be there for a couple of extra days, and I've already almost filled all that time with different investor meetings over there. So I'm really looking forward to going to New York. It should be a really good event. Tim's a great guy as well. Yeah, you know, obviously we'll meet each other in person, and it should be a lot of fun as well. So if anyone else is, you know, in New York, then it's definitely something that people should go and attend.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be great. I think, and Saylor's gonna be there. He's gonna give a keynote at 10 a.m. I believe. So it's gonna be Really interesting. So what else that we haven't covered, Andrew, is happening right now? Are you working on that you are able to share? Because I know, of course, specifics is hard, but because you're a publicly traded company, what else is can you say about your thinking of the current environment and which tools to use, etc.?
Yeah. So in terms of our operating business, which no one talks about in that much detail, that's actually going quite well at the moment. I'm really pleased with the progress that we're making on that. I'm not allowed to talk about the numbers, but normally it'd be quite quiet in the summer, and it's actually busier than it normally would be. But that's only a small business, despite the fact that we're trying to grow it. So we're trying to build out that team a little bit as well. So I don't know, 3, 6, 9, 12 months time, that should start to make a bit more of a difference to the business, because even though no one's that interested in it, I care about it, and it's got the obvious benefit of the more money that makes, the more it covers the PLC costs, which is obviously important. So that's quite good. We were really pleased to be able to announce the Smarter Convert, because we've got our ATM running. We've got our Smarter Convert now, so that's another option. When we're speaking to investors, we can talk about the equity style or the Smarter Convert, because different people want different things. I'm quite looking forward to sort of the next couple of weeks, getting out the way, because we've got things that we're doing and we're very, very busy, but the market is always a bit quieter over the summer. I don't really understand why it always works like this, that, when the market's quieter, people don't take advantage of the opportunity. And then, you get into like September, everything rips, people pile in then. I don't really understand why people don't just sort of, buy like 2-3 weeks before. But, there you go. And then when we get into September, well, actually, before we get into September, I'm going to Hong Kong. So that's for the Bitcoin conference in Hong Kong. That should be really good. And then obviously we get into September, and then it just goes absolutely berserk. So I've got those couple of days in New York. There's a Bitcoin event on the Saturday when I get back. So I've got to go straight there from the airport. The week before, the week after, there's another 2 Bitcoin events on the Friday nights in the UK. And then there's a conference that's just been announced, which is on one of those Fridays as well. That's in London at the Mansion House. That should be quite good as well. So there's so much stuff going on at the moment. And like, I get a lot of messages from, friends, investors and things. And, a lot of people are saying that it's quiet at the moment, and it is quiet in terms of the market. But in terms of what we're doing, it's absolutely crazy. It's busier than it's ever been. Every month it gets like that, busier than the previous month. So that gives me a lot of confidence, you see, because as an investor myself in our company and other Bitcoin treasury companies in Bitcoin itself, I'm not in the slightest bit worried about, what it's going to do over the next few months, and maybe that's dangerous. Maybe I believe so much that we're going higher that maybe that's blinding it, but that's my opinion again. And, I'm entitled to that. But seeing what I'm seeing and with the conversations that I'm having, it's more exciting than ever. Just the company, the general sector. So yeah, I'm pretty looking forward to that. And then I've even got quite a bit of the diary filling up thereafter, right up to the end of the year. I've even got some things in there for next year, which is pretty unheard of for me, because I'm not normally that organized. But yeah, it's pretty good at the moment, actually, on the whole.
So when you're, I too believe that Bitcoin is going to go higher, and but what differs you a little bit from some other companies is you're still keeping some cash. So even if Bitcoin does go down, that would play to your advantage, because then cash you have on the balance sheet can be converted to Bitcoin.
Yeah, it sort of would and it wouldn't, I suppose. So we do normally keep a little bit of cash. But so Sailor put out a slide earlier showing their cash relative to their Bitcoin. They've got $50 million that they keep in cash. which, not a lot of people know that, but clearly they're a much bigger business, so they need some working capital. But as a percentage versus the Bitcoin holding, it's tiny. Whereas in the early days, the first month or two, we were spreading out the purchase, say, over 2 weeks, as we built it up, which, looking back at history, I think everyone agrees was probably the right strategy. It's a bit different now in the sense that, whereas it was 2 weeks before, it might be, I'm not going to say the exact time, but let's call it half a week now. But we still keep a tiny bit of cash back in the Treasury for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons might be that it just makes more sense because we're doing round numbers now to the nearest 10, So when we did the buy that we announced the other day, I think we kept £500,000 back, and that wasn't for any massive reason. Away from the Treasury, we actually keep, probably more money than most companies, in the UK would keep for our working capital, which is getting topped up by the operating income as well, all the time. So we keep that separate. When we disclose the numbers of the cash that we're keeping in the Treasury, that is excluding the wider cash position of the company. So we obviously have to juggle that as we see fit. Sometimes when we raise money, we take nothing out of it. Sometimes we might take a few £100,000 out of it, for that side of things. I don't think we've ever actually taken a few £100,000 out of it, but hypothetically speaking, obviously the commission has to come out of it. So yeah, we're, everything's going pretty well. I think maybe when we get, say, don't hold me to this, to like 5,000 Bitcoin, we'll probably lose the cash figure in the Treasury that we disclose, because it will be so meaningless at that point. If we're keeping back, 1-2 million or something like that, it's meaningless relative to the size of the Bitcoin, because our Treasury is approximately £200 million at the moment. So, yes, we could buy a bit more Bitcoin slightly cheaper, but our philosophy is that we're short the pound, long Bitcoin. So, the cash being held back isn't so much for a rainy day, because I've always said that the worst thing that you can do when you're running a Bitcoin Treasury company after the first couple of months is to not deploy the cash in case Bitcoin rips. If Bitcoin dips, everyone understands that, because your belief is that Bitcoin is where you want to hold it, and you ride out those dips. But I think it's almost inexcusable if Bitcoin rips and you haven't got a reason why you haven't deployed the majority of the cash. So, that's probably a longer answer than you wanted, but there you go.
No. And Andrew, me and everyone watching wants to hear you talk, so very happy with that. Thank you. You also mentioned that you see an uptick in your current business, and I remember Saylor was talking about how the fact that they've become a treasury company and all the attention that gave was a great marketing, really, for their business. Is that what you're experiencing as well in you guys making websites for companies? And hereby a plug for that.
Yeah, so if you think about it, it's approximately 3.5 months since we listed, and the first couple of months went better than I was expecting on the PLC side. Hence the capital, the Bitcoin stack, etc., etc. Tremendously pleased with that. On the operating business, I kind of expected that to get a bit more of an uptick quicker. And I think, whilst I can't talk about the numbers, I think we're only starting to see the benefit of that now. Because when people inquire about buying a website, they might find you and then they might get in touch 2 months later. It takes a bit of time. So I think for me, with the benefit of the first couple of months of data, I'll look back at the first whole year and I'll see whether that was, justifiably better through having that increased visibility as being a public company. So when we did our admission document, which is our prospectus, we did say that the increased visibility of being a public company would assist the operating business in its marketing efforts. So I think when we get to the end of that first year, we'll see that. And then we'll also see the, so we're recruiting a marketing manager at the moment. Or it might end up being a sort of a just below a marketing manager, because we've had some really good candidates that haven't quite fit that profile. So whatever it ends up being, these additional marketing things that we wouldn't have done, which we've been able to do because of being a PLC. And I think it's moderately exciting, that side of things. And the great thing about what we do as an operating business, like a lot of online businesses or businesses that generate most of their activity through online, it's so easy to track everything, all the key points that have triggered the various different events. So, like we can see where all of our business comes from, existing clients, Google, pay-per-click, SEO, whatever. And we can then say what's working and what isn't working, do more of what's working, less of what isn't working, and that side of things. So yeah, the short version is it's starting to make a difference, but that side of things is taking a little bit longer than I expected, whereas the PLC side of things has gone a little bit quicker than I expected.
Right, excellent. And please note that I'm not at all putting myself, applying for this job. You have marketing, but the funny thing is, 20 years ago, I was working doing online marketing for a website company. However, this was on the low price, all modules and everything, you have to do it yourself kind of thing. So it's a volume marketing kind of thing, where you guys do bespoke websites, right?
Yeah, but we do it not that differently to that. So it's very affordable. You're talking a couple of £1,000 to have a bespoke website designed for you. So it's very modular, and it's kind of like what you were doing, but with a bespoke service on top of it. So the beauty of the service is you don't have to do it all yourself, but you're not paying an expensive agency, and you're getting a similar sort of end product. But yeah, if there's anyone out there that's interested, because what we might end up doing for this particular role is we might end up finding somebody that, say, studied marketing, really passionate about it. Maybe he's got a year or two experience in it, but is really keen to progress their career. And we might accept that. Then we can train that person up, because we've had a couple of good candidates that are more experienced, but a lot of the people that are more experienced haven't been so good. So we're pretty flexible on that. So if you know of anyone or if there's anyone watching that wants to get in touch and put themselves forward for that, that would be that's a really good opportunity for people, and we're pretty flexible on that side of things as well.
Yeah. So I've been way out of that game for a very long time, but I remember back then, Google search, banner advertising, affiliate, that was all the main and most important kind of advertising tools. But that's not why people are here to hear more about your marketing. But it's interesting, and if anyone's out there, get hold of Andrew and help them sell more websites. That would be awesome. So with the current MNAV, that is a little bit lower than it was 2 months ago when we first spoke. How hard are you still able to hit the equity issuance in terms of continuing to raise funds? I mean, it's still quite accretive when you do so in terms of generating more Bitcoin per stock. But so how hard is the pedal hitting the metal with the current MNAV, so to speak?
Yeah, so I'll be honest and transparent, like I always am. So on my calculations, the current MNAV is 2.7. So what I'm doing to calculate that is I'm taking a diluted number of shares in issue. So I'm taking the shares in issue, and then I'm adding on the potential shares in issue from Smarter Convert, and then I'm not adding in the warrants, which will come into play in, say, 8 months. We've got a plan on those as well. Everyone will be pleased to hear. So that's a pretty accurate figure for the MNAV, 2.7 at the current share price. Now, clearly, raising money at a 2.7 MNAV for a Bitcoin Treasury company is beneficial, because you are improving the Bitcoin per share for the shareholders. It's as simple as that. Especially if you do it as we do it, where I do not believe in discounts. If the market is discounting our stock, which we've all, well, not me, because I'm not selling the shares, but everyone that's trading on the market has got a responsibility for setting that price. If the market's discounting our share price, like it does at the moment, or in my opinion, to 195 or whatever it is, then that's different. But I will not discount the share price when raising capital, because I don't need to at the end of the day, and I don't think it's right. So in short, from a mathematical point of view, you can raise money all day long at this price, and it's beneficial to the shareholders because you're improving the Bitcoin per share. So everyone that understands that should see that over the long term, that's a good thing to do. Now, there's a slight complexity in this though, which is, let's say the share price dipped a bit more. What do people want me to do? Because I've got two options there. One is I cannot raise money for a period of time. The second one is I can raise money, improve the Bitcoin per share, and dilute people, but it's still beneficial because you're improving the Bitcoin per share. So I wouldn't want to say exactly what we'll do, let's say for the next week, 2 weeks on that front, because hopefully what everyone's seen today is that we do things at the right time or when we think they're the right time. But purely from a maths point of view, raising money at 2.7 MNAV is beneficial to the company. I don't think for a smaller Bitcoin treasury company, I don't think, say it went below 2, which I don't think it's going to do at all. I don't think it's necessarily the right thing to do. Maybe 2.5. But the job is to from a treasury point of view, to increase the Bitcoin per share. That's something that is important. My personal opinion is that we'll probably bumble around at this sort of price. Can't see it going that much lower. Maybe go to like 250 or something like that over the next week or two. I'm obviously not meant to talk about these price things. This is my opinion, not a projection.
Right.
But I don't know when it will happen, whether it'll be a week, 2 weeks, whatever. At some point, bit before, bit after September, assuming Bitcoin's on the trajectory that I think it'll be on, then we'll be back up again, and everyone will be saying the same thing that they always say, which is, why the hell didn't I load up when it was a 2.7 MNAV?
Yeah, and I just want to make everyone aware, if there's some that don't know, but if you go to investors.smarterwebcompany.co.uk/analytics, you'll find this or this page that Andrew and his team has put together, where you can see all these key numbers, like the share price, how many Bitcoin a hold, development in share price, Bitcoin held, the NAV, and the MNAV. And I completely agree with you here, Andrew. Andrew, it's still 2.8. Let me just remove it, get us back on. It's still, according to your website, 2.83, which is highly accretive. So there's still enough steam on the engine that running it at this level does allow you to increase Bitcoin quite significantly per share, from my perspective.
What we do as well is on our ATM style facility, we never sell on a down day. So lots of people have said that you could structure it in a different way. I believe that how we've structured it is right. I don't think people want us selling on a down day. You could do that. You could structure it on MNAV instead of up and down days and things. But we're really happy with how the ATM style facility has worked to date. And I think it's structured in the right way. And I agree with you. It is beneficial to shareholders, existing shareholders, raising money at that sort of an MNAV.
No, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to be able to still see Bitcoin purchases from you guys and pushing the Bitcoin per stock higher, because we're still at that level. So that is very good from an investor point of view. So Johannes here, whom I know, he's a Danish Bitcoiner, has a question for you that I want to throw up. Any worries about regulatory pushbacks from the government in the UK?
Yeah, so in simple, no. We do everything that's asked of us, and more. We've not had a single concern raised about how we're running the business. So I'm pretty relaxed about it. If the question is, am I concerned about what the government's doing away from our company, then yes, very much so. But that only strengthens my belief in what we're doing as a company. So, you know, I don't have any concerns. I've not been made aware of any concerns or anything like that about, you know, what we're doing. I would hope that the regulators and those sorts of people like to see a positive story coming out of the UK. So yeah, it's quite a simple one, that answer.
So I'm going to try and ask in a way where, well, for sure, answer in a way where you don't get in trouble. But is there currently some level of pushback on Bitcoin in general outside the stock market in the
No,
in the UK?
no, that's not what I mean.
Okay.
No, and I shouldn't criticize the government because that always gets you in trouble. But I just meant more in the wider sort of, you know, I'm not a political person at all. But I just mean in the wider thing, you know, the fact that they're not looking after the country for the benefit of, you know, our children and things like that. You know, maybe they're not doing a good job from a tax point of view. Maybe they're not doing a good job of spending the public's money properly, all those sorts of things, you know, the sort of things that people moan about all the time, and nothing to do with Bitcoin. To be fair to the government, from a Bitcoin point of view, they're more positive than they've been for many, many years. So whilst we can all moan about them, I'm sure it's a harder job than we all think, potentially.
Yeah, but
from a Bitcoin point of view, they're actually being quite positive at the moment. So maybe we have to give them a bit of credit for that. Apart from trying to sell the Bitcoin. Did you see that story that came out the other day?
Tell me.
Oh, so there was a thing in one of the papers which said the Chancellor was thinking about selling our Bitcoin, you know, the 5 billion or whatever, it might be 7 billion, I'm not sure how much it is, of Bitcoin that the UK government effectively holds. You know, I didn't think that was a very good thing.
That is very sad for the inhabitants, citizens of UK, if that's the case. Yeah, I hope they don't do that. But we've seen it in Germany. Germany had 50,000 Bitcoin, sold them all for money that they can just print. That's
the same thing that I said to my friend. I said they should be doing the opposite. At the end of the day, they control the printer. You know, like it's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, but you know, it is what it is, I suppose. I'm not as bullish actually as most people are about state adoption of Bitcoin. Like, obviously, I would welcome it. I see it as a great thing, but you know, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't make any difference to me. In my opinion, you know, I don't want people to take that the wrong way, but you know, I'm quite relaxed about that side of things. And you know, you've got an obvious conflict there between the people that have got their own currency, like the UK has got the pound, the Americans have got the dollar, and you know, effectively Bitcoin. So I'm quite relaxed about that side of things as well. But what I don't think is acceptable is for the UK government to sell the Bitcoin when they could be keeping it for the benefit of our children.
Absolutely. Andrew, any update on the timeline for preferred stock? Any speculation that you can share in terms of when is it technically and collaterally wise possible?
Yeah, so the beauty of having other great companies like Strategy and Metaplanet is that you can see what they've done and when they've done it and how that's worked and things like that. If you look at Metaplanet, their stack is approximately 9 times as big as ours, something like that. So maybe that's the benchmark. I've always said that it's something that we'd like to do longer term when we're an appropriate size. There's quite significant costs to offering preference shares because it's a bit like a mini IPO. You need liquidity for things like that as well. I like the smarter convert product that we have publicly come out with today because I think that's quite a good stepping stone towards that. I think that there's reasons not to do traditional convertible things as well, very good reasons not to do those. So I think it's quite a good thing as we get bigger. I don't know whether, you know, the value of our treasury needs to be 500 million pounds, £1 billion, £2 billion. Probably doesn't need to be any bigger than that. So I don't really know. I think it would be something, if you really pushed me on it, I'd probably say, if I was guessing, a year from now, to have it live. You know, not, you know, because it would take months to get that thing there. You know, we've had lots of discussions about it already, you know, including with, you know, the advisors, the brokers, the lawyers, etc. You know, the reality is, as much as people might not want to hear it, is the size that we are at the moment, it doesn't make economic sense to do that. I think maybe a little bit smaller than Metaplanet, it would make economic sense to do that.
Gotcha.
So, you know, it's stepping stones, isn't it? It's the evolution of what we're doing. Maybe one of the things that you'll see is, whereas, you know, take Metaplanet, for example, let's say they get them done by the end of this year, which will be approximately 18 months from them changing their strategy, which was April 2024. So, you know, that's 18 months. So they got from 0 to 1,000 Bitcoin in 6 months. We did it in 2 months. So maybe it will take us a year, maybe something like that, which would be April next year. I'm not saying that's when it's going to happen. I'm just saying maybe for the companies that come up behind the other companies that do it so well, the timescales maybe get shorter for most things. So I don't think it will take that long until people see that, you know, but is it going to be tomorrow? No, it's not going to be tomorrow.
And that leads me to the next question. Any news or speculation on uplisting to the, it's called the London Stock Exchange, right? The LSE?
Yeah, the LSE, yeah. So I probably can't say anything that I haven't already said on that, in the sense that, you know, we are focused on being one of the biggest companies in the UK. We are the biggest holder of Bitcoin in the UK, public company holding Bitcoin in the UK. I would like us to be, say, in the top, you know, quarter or so of the FTSE 100 within a year, 2 years, that sort of a thing. That means that we've got to be a £40 billion market cap. Not sure whether we can be a £40 billion market cap on Aquis. You know, I'm not in a position where I'm allowed to say at what stage the process is at. But maybe we just say that, you know, we're trying to do everything as quickly as we can, and we believe that we're doing things in the right order at the right time for the benefit of where we want to be. And as soon as we can say anything different, where we are with that process, we'll say.
All right, so I have 2 things left, because I can see we're actually nearing 6 p.m. in UK. 2 things is, one, there was a question in the chat, what SWC's bear market BDC, potential BDC bear market strategy would be. The other thing I want to say is, so with your current MNAV share price, that puts your market cap around 6,000 Bitcoin. That's how I like to analyze and evaluate companies like yours. Yet you have a target of reaching more than 100,000 Bitcoin. Is it actually 1%? Is it 210,000 Bitcoin? Right. Yeah. So that's quite a steep discount to where SWC potentially could go, and that's a return in Bitcoin. So that's, I think, very exciting. But if you have any comments on that, and then the SWC, if you have a bear market strategy, and then I want to also, you know, say thank you for your time, and I know it's about up.
Sure. So in terms of the targets and things like that, you know, all that we ever say is that we want to do better every day, week, month, etc. You know, I'll be quite disappointed if we're not holding a multiple of what we're holding today before the end of the year. You know, I don't mean double there either, by the way. So, you know, a multiple. I won't say the exact number that I've got in my mind, but yeah, so we'd be basically past your 6,000 thing by a margin, which would be good. So, you know, are we valued at fairly at the moment? Well, I think we're actually undervalued at 2.7 MNAV. But you know, I can see it from a variety of different arguments there. In terms of a bear market, that side of things. Now, ironically, if you're in a bear market, so yes, it's harder to raise capital, but it's a lot easier to buy Bitcoin because Bitcoin will be cheaper based on wherever it starts. Now, I think people need to also understand that if we do get a bear market, it depends what's happened before. So say, for example, we go to 300,000 and then we have a 50% correction to 150,000 Bitcoin, then, you know, how long is that correction going to be as well? Because, you know, like everything, whatever you're looking at, things get more concentrated. They speed up over time, almost everything. And so, you know, those bear markets, are they going to be shorter, you know, longer, et cetera, et cetera? Are they going to even happen at all? You know, I wouldn't bet my life on it, but I'm pretty confident that those sorts of bear markets that we've seen in the past are going to be very different in the future. So what you have to remember is that capital is going to be harder to raise in a bear market. Debt is potentially going to be cheaper. So if we all think back to 20 years ago, for example, you borrow as much money as you want for pretty much 0%, you know. Nowadays, I don't know what it is to borrow money, but I'd imagine it's 5 to 10%, dependent on how much, who you are, etc. Maybe 4% in the UK. So, you know, obviously more expensive than 0%. But there's all sorts of things that you can do in those sorts of scenarios. So you've got the irony in the sense that it's probably easier to grow the Bitcoin per share in a way, providing you're not trading at a discount. The good thing that we've got as well is we've got an operating business that is, you know, all being well, growing. So it's not like we're reliant on external capital to keep the PLC intact, because the last thing that we'd ever want to do, and I don't think we would ever need to do this, would be to ever touch any of our Bitcoin, you know, because, you know, the whole idea is that you hold it forever for the benefit of the business. So yeah, we talk about those scenarios a lot, and that's one of the reasons why not being over leveraged is quite important. So if you look at the structure of smart convert, for example, in the worst case scenario, you have to return the Bitcoin. You've not exposed yourself to a traditional fiat debt type thing. There's literally no cost of servicing that debt. So yeah, we think about it and we just make sure that the business is structured in a right way, you know, for the long term. You know, that's what I care about. Of course, I care about the short term, but I'm very focused, and all of my actions are based on the medium to long term.
All right, excellent answer, Andrew. As all of them, I enjoy my time here with you. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you to the 457 live viewers right now across X and YouTube. Andrew, anything you want to finish off with? Otherwise, just thank you from me and to everyone watching.
I just want to thank everyone for their support, as I always like to do. You know, we're trying our best. You know, if you look at this week, you know, we've announced some funding through equity on the Monday, the Smarter Convert today. I think everyone's probably expecting a Bitcoin buy in the not too distant future. You know, me too. You know, we're trying our best. We believe that the company is a lot stronger than it was, you know, a month ago. Certainly, way stronger than it was 2 months ago. You know, we're only just getting started on the journey, and we're very, very excited. A lot more excited than I was a few weeks ago about, you know, the immediate and then the slightly longer term future. But you know, the support of everyone means so much to me. And you know, all I can do is my best to make sure that me and the rest of the team execute the strategy as you all, I believe, hope that we will do.
Absolutely. All right. On that note, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, everyone. And also thank you for the several nice comments in the chat. It seems, Andrew, that people have been enjoying our conversation here. So once again, thank you, everyone. Have a great evening, and